Okay, I'm just going to make this so that everyone has a reference and they can go back to this if they have questions. If I don't cover anything in this, then that's fine. I'll come in and help whenever I can. I'm just going to use AnimDessin and Photoshop to do a bouncing ball with a really simple background. And hopefully that should cover everything that we need to do. It's going to look super rough, so don't expect anything good. So you don't need to start your there's a way to change this. See if I can make this a bit easier for you guys to see. There used to be a way to highlight the pen, but I don't. Oh no, it's still highlight. Okay. You don't need to use a film and video setting to make an animation in Photoshop. This helps if you're actually making something that doesn't have a preset size like the one we've been given, because these are set up to work on TV screens and cinema screens. So if you're making a feature film, putting it on YouTube or whatever, or like short animation or whatever, you can use one of these settings, but you don't need that every time. Like if you want to make a small GIF, then just a small thing will do. So I tend to always either just go for A3 or A4 because it's a pretty standard size. Go landscape because it's easier to work in for an animation. I'll get rid of these so I can show you guys how to set this up. So this is my kind of basic setup. I find this the easiest to use. I usually have my color above my layers actually. The navigator makes it super easy to move around your screen without having to constantly find buttons. You can just scroll around, and if you're zoomed in far enough, you can just move around the screen with this one panel, which is, I find, one of the most useful tools, and I use it just as much as I use layers and the color block. Here I don't really use recent files or anything like that. It's just kind of spammy and I don't really need it. What are these ones? Characters, don't need them. Or these, device preview, that's probably good for something, but I don't use it. These are the only ones I really use. I'll get into this later once we're all colouring, but I don't want to overcomplicate it just now. These are the two that I constantly mix up but use frequently. Brush presets and the brush. So I think you should know what all of these are. It's pretty simple. I tend to use right click more than I use shortcuts on my laptop. The only shortcut I ever really use is Control Alt Z to undo things, because there's no shortcut button that I can get on my screen for that. So to set up your Photoshop for an animation, you go into Window up here and then down to Timeline, and that presents you with the timeline you'll be working in. And then if you have AnimDessin installed, then it's an extension, it's in Window again, and then AnimDessin. I find it easiest to keep them down here where everything's held together, and it just makes everything a bit tidier. It's up to you how much space you want to give yourself for your timeline. I like having a big timeline, but I also like seeing most of what's happening on screen, so I kind of need to make sacrifices sometimes. Okay, so you start with create a video timeline. and this layer here is going to be my background. So I can just drag and drop however long I want this to be. And since we're only doing a bouncing ball animation, I'm using this slider down here to zoom in on the timeline, which will only be a couple of frames long. I forget how long it should be. I think it's like 15 or something. I should calibrate my pen because it's slightly off. Yeah, okay. So my background's just going to be 15. I'm just going to draw a super simple line across my canvas. I don't want them being on separate layers, so I'm going to go over to my layer thing and merge down, and that's just going to make one layer. So that should be it for... Oh, it's pale green, can't see it. I know Amanda was asking about this, but if you find your colours not working properly, I'm not sure what the problem was with yours, but you can just go into image adjustments, and that's where you find your brightness and contrast, your hue and saturation. Most of these other things are pretty useful as well, but they're complicated and for another time. Whoops. Okay, so I'm just going to draw that line again, but I'm going to make it black this time, and I'm going to make it heavier so it's easier to see. Can you see that a bit better? Yeah, you can see it. Or you should be able to. Okay, so this is all one layer now, and that's my background layer. The simplest way of doing things is to name them. Like, you just don't want to get your layers mixed up with this because you're going to be using a lot of them. So whenever you want to make a new timeline layer, you want to go into this button here and new video group, and see how that makes a folder over here. Each folder in your standard layers is a layer in your timeline. Like, there's a difference between these two, which is kind of a complicated bit, but you kind of grow used to it after a while. You kind of forget this entire panel exists, and it's really only useful for the start, or if you want to move things around. So you can probably minimize it as much as you want just now because you're not going to be using it much. So I'm going to take you through the buttons that you're most likely to use on the AnimDessin panel. There's New Timeline, which brings in and takes away your timeline. If you don't want to go into Window, or you've already got AnimDessin set up, you can just use this button. This button here will create a completely new document. Remember, we're working on 25 frames per second. If you've not got that set up, you should probably do that. So this is a completely new setup. It kind of gives you your size, and you're not allowed to pick it when you're using AnimDessin, so you're better just making a document to the size that you need it to be, and then opening AnimDessin on that. Excuse me. Oh, I thought I was going to sneeze. I'm not. Okay. So, I don't really use this one much. This is clearly save. I don't know what this is. Oh, changes your canvas size. Okay. These will probably be the ones you use most, as well as this one. I explained this already, but these are your frames. So if you want to add 1 frame, there you go. If you want to add 2 frames, there it is. The difference between these two is, if you can remember back to when we were scanning in our traditional animations and we would hold a frame for 2 if we were working on 2s, that's exactly what this is. The longer you drag out one panel, depends on how long you're holding it for. So this button is just 1 frame, this button holds for 2 frames. Okay, This button will obviously delete whatever frame is selected. And what did I do there? This button here will duplicate whatever frame you've already got at the same length it is. So, say I draw smiley face. I'm going to use a better pen so you can see that better. If you're... Okay, this is a good example, because I do this all the time by accident. When you want to draw on a certain frame, you need to make sure it's selected. Like this one is here, it's highlighted in white. And you need to make sure your playhead, that's what this is. That's what shows what's currently on screen. It needs to be hovering over the frame you want to draw on, because otherwise you're not going to see what you're drawing. And Photoshop will tell you you're doing something wrong. So if you get this error message, don't freak out. It's just because you don't have your little timeline playhead in the right place, or you've not selected the correct frame, because I do that all the time. Okay, so you can see it's a bit better. Oh, and it keeps going back because I'm an idiot. Okay, so this button here duplicates what's right there. I'm just going to move it across. So now each frame has a different moving smiley face. But it's the exact same drawing, I've just moved it over slightly. Okay, so actually I'll bring them back. This button here, which I've explained already, but I'll go over it again, is onion skins. I've turned it on, but you can't really see what's there until I move it back. That's because you can set up how much you see of your onion skin. And if you want to do that, you want to go through to these 4 little lines on the right side of the timeline. Click on that, onion skin settings. And you can set how many frames before you want to see, how many frames after you want to see. I think the maximum is 8, which is kind of a letdown, but oh well. And then how dark you want your onion skins to be. So if you find them to be too dark and you can't see what's happening, you can make your maximum 25% and your minimum like 10%. So there, I'll make frames before 2, frames after 2. So I should be able to see now as it goes through. So see, I've now got my playhead, this button, on where frame 3 should be. Frame 2 is darker because it's the closer one. Frame 1 is lightest because it's the furthest away one. It's just kind of like it would be if you were layering paper on top of each other on top of a light box. Okay. So that's onion skins. And then there's this one here, which I use sometimes because I'm notorious for doing sketch layers first and then drawing on top of them. It just makes everything look a little bit cleaner for me, since I can't draw well right off the bat. So yeah, it'll just make you a new video group on the left here. But we don't want one yet. These, I believe, are just, yeah, they extend and minimize how long your current frame is, but you can do that just by dragging, so it's up to you. These will, making it red was probably not the best choice since I used red, but these will colour your image differently, and it will also colour your frame just to indicate which frame is which. There's a bunch of complicated stuff happening over here, but you don't need to pay attention to that because it doesn't really matter. It's just an automatic thing that AnimDessin is doing for you. So it'll change it between red, green, blue, and then taking the colour away entirely. I use it just in case there's a lot of moving about I need to do. Like if I've duplicated something, I need to duplicate it again, but I need to delete the first one, and it'll get really messy really easily. So sometimes it's good to be able to color code some of your frames. I doubt you'll use them too much, but it's better to know than to be super disorganized and losing your place all the time. Okay, so... Oh, these two down here as well. Oh, and this. Photoshop likes starting on 30 frames per second, so make sure you keep an eye out for this. You go into this little panel again, where you get your unskins and set timeline frame rate. Hey. Photoshop will do this thing when you change your frames midway through doing an animation, or your frame rate halfway through doing animation, like you've set it to a certain time already. So this was only like, I don't know, 0.2 of a second long. It's made it 0.2 of a second long again, but it's changed your frames to make it that way. So instead of it actually being 1 frame long, they've made them a weird length, so just keep your eye out for that. Make sure you're setting up your frame rate before you do anything, because it will start screwing with your animation. What else? Oh, this is where you can loop your playback. So I'm going to be using it in the case of this bouncing ball because I want it to loop. And then there's these scissors, which you might use frequently, you might not, it just depends. So in some cases, some people, instead of using the duplicate button, they will extend this. This is mostly really used when you you don't have AnimDessin, but it's good to know just in case, like if you're forced to work on any of the Macs. You can use these scissors to cut your frame in half. It doesn't do it on 2 frames for some reason. It likes being picky. But you can always short it down. Yeah, come on, break. There we go. Just had to make it 4 frames long. Okay. It's kind of a really temperamental tool. That's why you don't use it very often. I would rather just use the duplicate button. But it's there if you want to use it, I guess. Okay, so now I don't think there's anything else you need to know. Those are pretty much the fundamentals. So I'll just delete these two. Try and remember how the timing for a bouncing ball works. And start. I'll try and show you some examples of in betweening as well while we're doing this. So yeah. Okay, so like I said, this is not going to be good. So there's my high point. And then next I can put when it hits the ground. I'm mostly just trying to get this right because I know Sharon would kill me if I did it wrong, and I can like feel so disapproving. Oh yeah, I should probably point this out because it took me a little while to realise myself. Go away. Go away. Oh, what are you doing? Oh. Where's the... There it is. Okay. If you find something too big or too small and you need to resize it, what are you doing? Is it because of this? It is because of that. I was being stupid. Oh, good to know that's how that works. You're constantly learning in this program. I still don't know how to use it completely, but if you find the head's too big or the feet are too big or whatever, you can select it with your selection tools, which are these two here. Or you can use this one if you want to be fancy and select only certain bits, and it should use smart technology to highlight the bits that you want to use, but we wouldn't be using them, I don't think. So if you want to change the shape of something, you want to right click and then free transform. Make sure you are on the correct layer with the timeline on the right bit, because the whole like play ahead on the wrong bit, giving you an error notification doesn't really happen with transforming. You can transform things no matter what you're looking at. So be careful with that one. Don't pick, when you're doing this, don't pick transform selection, because that only transforms the area of selection. It doesn't actually transform what's in it. So free transform. If you're resizing something, it can sometimes warp out of shape. So the best way to keep it consistent is to hold shift and then pull it up, and that should keep it the same general size. Or you can just hit T and that should start your transformation when it's selected as well. To deselect, you can either go into select up here and then deselect. You can hit Control D, or while you're still on your selection tool, just tap anywhere on the screen and it will deselect. Okay, so we have our up and we have our down. If I remember rightly, with a bouncing ball, this is tragic, and also my ball is misaligned. Aha! See, here's an example of... See, you can clearly see I'm on down, but when I moved something, it moved the ball on the up. So just make sure you're looking at what you need to move, because you'll quickly realise you've fucked something up. Or you'll realise you fucked something up far too late. Okay, so we got her up, we got her down. If I remember rightly, the middle frame is somewhere closer to the up ball because anticipation. So I'm going to stick a 2 in between these two. Okay, so my onion skin is long enough that I can see both of these. And just about here, yeah, I'm going to draw a really bad ball. Oh my god, I do not have the steadiest hand. Okay, it's still slightly out of line. But hey, here's the beauty of digital work. Doesn't look the right size, just resize it and fine and dandy. Not in the right place, resize it, you're fine and dandy. Move it about, you're fine and dandy. That's one thing I really missed while doing traditional work. Okay, so I don't know if you noticed, I'm gonna go back and then redo everything. But when I was, oh my pen is low, why? I've not been using it that much. When I was making my in-between, I put my time head right between these two frames. I selected the first one and then I used the 2 button on AnimDessin. So yeah, and then move my time head into the middle of the new one, and then do this again. Draw my new ball, which is significantly better than the first one. Here we go. Okay, deselect. So it's mostly that kind of process. Put it in the middle, select the one before, insert that new frame. How many frames are there? I'll just zip through this quickly. No. In the middle, first frame. You don't need to put your playhead in the middle when you're actually drawing, it's just a personal preference of mine. So that it's just as kind of tidy as possible, I guess. It just makes it super clear which frame I'm on. I don't confuse myself. Okay, so this can be where it comes in handy to use your colours. So like here, this is my center frame. I'm going to colour that green just so I can say, right, this is my middle point. Or rather, yeah, that was my middle point. I'll put that there. Selected the one before it, too. There we go. I'm gonna do one more circle frame. It turned out that wasn't the center and I completely forgot how to do this, and that's probably gonna look bad, but oh well. Center, I'm gonna do my stretch here. There's another case of me not being on the right frame. I do that constantly, don't feel bad if you do. Yeah, I'm gonna stretch this one out, maybe not as much as I did. That looks kind of eggy. Oops. Nice thing about my tablet, I have one of my pen buttons set up to just become an eraser at will, which is quite nice. So now here, I bumped you. Since I'm gonna make this repetitive, I need the last frame to be the same as the first. Another example of why I color code. So I zoom out. I'm going to use the blue to highlight my first one. I'm going to duplicate it and then move it to the end. So now I can see that's the start, the green's the middle, and then blue is the start again. And I will make, that's not my squash, that's my squash. I'm going to make my squash red. And my background is not long enough, so I'm just going to drag that out a bit longer. Just now I can use this little line here with these little grabby things. These are what you use to show how much you play. So when I go to play this, it's whatever it plays is going to be between these two bars, so I can make it as long as I want, as long as the longest point, and it's going to run forever, or I can just make it as long as my shortest point. And I colored the wrong... Oh, I'm an idiot, no. Okay, I colored the wrong one, that's the squish. Okay, so let's see how this runs so far. Okay, so don't feel bad if this runs really slowly. See down here? If the numbers turn red down here, why are you back to... 30 frames per second, stop it. Okay, so here's another classic case of it changing what's happening. So like, you can see how the line goes, you can see the size of the frames. They all got squished because they're trying to stay at the same time that they were previously. So they're squashing the frames to make that happen, and I do this more than you would think because I'm stupid. Oh, shit. Didn't mean to do that. Oh, don't do that. You silly. Okay, So this starts running slowly, don't feel bad, it's just taking its time to render what's already there, especially when you have your unruned frames on. That'll confuse it a bit, so make sure to turn them off before you play. And there it stops, because that's where I put my playhead. You'll also get these stupid lines that I hate so much, but they don't actually mean anything. Don't panic if they're there. It's just it being dumb. Okay, so we've got a nice fall. I can't really remember how to do a bouncing ball, that's quite tragic. But anyway. I'm gonna extend my background a little bit more. See, hypothetically, if I was super lazy, I could just duplicate all these frames and move them in between. Which I'm gonna do to make a point and see how it turns out. And I really hope it turns out well, because I can't be arsed. And then I'm gonna delete or no, I'm gonna edit this one because it feels wrong to me. But that's just a personal thing. There we go. Okay, so we've got that wrong. Let's see how it looks. Make sure to move your playhead to show what's actually there. Obviously I don't want this first and last frame repeating again, so I'm just going to move it to one before. And we'll see how it runs. That looks fine. I'm going to uncolor each of my significant points. And turn on loop playback so I can see a ball bounce. And it's rough, but it's there. And that's how to animate in Photoshop. You can see down here, the numbers are green, which means it's running at the correct time. Don't be fooled by that. If your timing seems off, it could only be off by like 0.1 of a frame. Make sure this number is green before you make a final judgment on anything. Oops. So, I think that's it. I'll go over colouring at another time. Yeah, I won't go over colouring because you can just colour it in with a brush, and if I do anything else then I'll need to, that'll overcomplicate it. So, that's it. Hope that's helped.